And I wanted to touch on one more thing, which is the moral injury part of all of this. That in addition to these stress symptoms, there is the moral injury. There's the sense of guilt and shame that can accompany what has happened. And I believe that in this Warrior Rendezvous environment, as with any retreat-like environment, it's offering a period of decompression. In conflicts, and I know you and I've talked about this, in conflicts in decades past, the soldier he would take a month to come home. And during that month to come home, there was this process of talking with his buddies about what went on. Whatever would go on the ship would happen, and there would be a decompression period. So there would be a certain level of readiness when the soldier returned home. Whereas today, in the contemporary conflicts, one day you're in theater, the next day you're in the supermarket. And that's hard. There is no decompression any longer.
Well, you're right with that. And the nature of our conflicts have changed.
Yes.
I mean, they're actually almost polar opposites, just from the simple fact that we're not, in these particular conflicts, we're not fighting an established military. The Vietnam War is very similar too. But like most of the soldiers that take part in any combat zone, regardless of what their job is, they're in it 24 hours a day for anywhere from 12 to 18 months, home for a period of time, and then go back again. So several, tours. I have friends that have 3 or 4 years in Afghanistan and Iraq. And there's no decompression. When we talk about decompression, there's no break at all.
Yeah.
When you can be attacked, in the middle of the night, and be attacked in the morning, you have to go outside of your your established safe zone. But, there's no guarantees that there's not going to be some kind of conflict during that day of life and death situations. And when you spend extended periods of time in areas like that, it is very difficult to come back from that. And it almost, we can spend your entire life, and I can attest to this directly, you can spend your entire life in an environment like the United States of America, where we have the freedom, we're relatively safe. I mean, bad things happen everywhere, but you're not living in an active combat zone. But you spend a year there, and then you come back home again, the place where you spend the majority of your life, and everything it's scary, and it's a very difficult situation to reconcile. And in many cases, the combat zones seem more of a safer environment, a simpler life, because you understand it. And really, it is more simple, because it's just basically make it through that day, keep yourself alive, and keep your men alive, the people around you. And when you live by that for such a long time, and then you come back home again, where there's so many complex things around us every day, if you really take a step back and look at how complex our lives are now, just with basic, our necessities to make it simpler, but it actually makes our lives more complicated. I think it's great that we can communicate at all times. That's a fantastic thing. What we're doing right now. I mean, we're in 2 different parts of the nation right now.
Yeah.
Being able to speak like this, it's great. But on the overall scheme of things, it's just another piece that adds to our burden of everyday life. Even though in some cases it makes our lives more convenient, it makes things more complicated.
You mentioned about when you are in a combat situation, when you're in theater, that you're in that war zone, that the daily life, in a certain sense, is so much more simpler, because it's just about that day and keeping yourself and your men safe, as you say. And I think that it is that very concept of that mindfulness. That's the mindfulness that we're talking about, that is inherent to a warrior's training. That if we can translate that gift, because I do believe it's a gift, to civilian life, how do you take that day and savor it, and realize that you can be safe and okay in your home, in your domestic environment, while still being aware of its preciousness? And I think that really is the gift right there.
Yes, that's a very, very good way to put that, because I mean, even now, I haven't been in a combat zone for 9 years now, and I've been very fortunate in a lot of the things that I get to do within my profession and the people that I'm around. That's actually been a very large portion of my acceptance and identification of my management. Not to say that I don't still have symptoms of that and things like that, but it's so easy to forget how precious every day is. And we talk about looking through that windshield into the future, the unknown. We worry about so many things, stress, and we add our stress, we add these things that pile up in our lives about the things that we cannot control. And the reality is most of them are very arbitrary in nature. It doesn't matter. Everything usually ends up working itself out. We just add this additional stress on us, and we forget how precious, how very nice it is to have the safety that we do, to be able to go to the supermarket and get the things that we need, and spend the time with the people that we love. We start to take things for granted. And that's I believe that's just a human trait. We just, we're so forgetful, when it comes. We get through these bad times, and then we get to where we're stable again, and we just forget, how really lucky we are, how fortunate we really are.